Lechi lach to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Happy to see you all the old-comers and the newcomers. And personally, I'm looking forward to this presentation by Stav. I actually already participated in her presentation, which was made in English as well, by the way, for other audience. And I was really excited because, you know, so often you walk down the street in Tel Aviv and you do see graffiti, you do see street art, but you don't necessarily notice it all, and you definitely don't know what it is and what is it connected to. And so I really enjoyed Stav's presentation. And she's an expert in street art and graffiti and the people who made the street art and graffiti and the differences between the two. And so personally, I'm looking forward to touring with Stav in Tel Aviv. So Stav, please join us. Please unmute yourself. Please share your screen, and good luck and enjoy.
Thank you so much. I have to say I'm so excited being here, just listening to you speaking about your 73 previous meetings and your after presentation schmooze really makes me feel like I'm getting into a community that is really loving and hugging, and it's so wonderful, and especially in a time like this. And whew, it's almost a year now that we're doing the whole COVID thing. And okay, I will just present myself quickly before I share the screen. My name is Stav. Stav means autumn or fall, because I was born in the autumn. I've been a tour guide since 2014, and I started guiding with Birthright and educational tourism. And once I moved to Tel Aviv, I started exploring and feeling more and more emotionally connected to the city and becoming more and more sensitive to the nuance, to the architecture, to the street art, to the markets. And today, this is my main thing that I do between quarantines. And when there are quarantines, I'm fortunate enough to be able to show my city in through Zoom events. And I'm really excited to show you my town. So let's get going with screen sharing. Today, I'll be using two platforms. The first one will be slides, and the second will be Earth. And I know this is not technically, this is not a virtual tour, but sometimes understanding the context is helpful, the geographical context. So I call this tour the Tel Aviv Street Museum, which sounds like a little bit like an oxymoron, because when we think about a museum, we think about a place that is open in certain hours and in certain days. We think about admission fees and about a curator that decides which artwork will stand next to which other artwork. And there's a committee that decides which artwork can be admitted into the museum. So in other words, there's a lot of people that decides what us, the audience, will get to see. And also there's a very small amount of population that actually goes to the museum because you actually have to pay money and make a day for it. And it's an event. Whereas the street is the anarchy. The anarchy and democracy, anyone can put their work out there at any time of the day, and you can put one work on another work or right next to the work, and the only person deciding where the work will be is the artist himself. And us as an audience, we can explore these artworks or graffiti or vandalism, we'll talk about that in a moment, at any time that we want. Some of us will be on our way to work and we'll see a street artwork. And some of us will be coming back to our car at 2 o'clock in the morning after a night out in a bar, and we'll see the same work of art. And we'll see it on the weekend, we'll see it on holidays, and we'll see it on day-to-day events. So in Tel Aviv, we have this special connection between an area that is full of works of street art or graffiti, depends who speaks about them, and and they are available for us in the street. So this is what we'll be focused on and we'll be exploring today. And on that note, we are going to move directly to the world. Can you guys see the world? Nod. Yes, amazing. So what we can see here is the Mediterranean. And actually our first station is over here in France. I don't know how many fortunate people have got to go to Lascaux. Maybe before the Corona time, when we used to travel, we used to go on an airplane and travel to places that are amazing like France. And what they have in Lascaux that is really interesting and not at all Tel Aviv related has everything to do with our story. What they found there are caves of the prehistoric people. And the reason I start with every street art talk is because there's something about us as people that makes us want to leave a mark behind. This is not something that is unique to adolescents or rebels. This is something we all used to do, maybe behind the seat in a bus, maybe on our desk when we were kids. But this is something that we've been doing as human beings, leaving a mark behind, something of ourselves, a description of our reality on our walls for many, 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 many years. So this is one aspect of graffiti that I want us to bear in mind, that it's not natural for us to ask permission to leave a work of art on a wall. It is a modern invention that we need to ask permission and go to a curator. So this is one thing that I want us to have in mind. And the other thing is, and actually I can do this. Oh, it's wonderful. But when we talk about modern graffiti, which is really what we can see behind me, a picture from Florentine in Tel Aviv. When we talk about modern graffiti, our main source of influence is not going to be from Europe. It's actually going to be from America, where you guys are all from, specifically Philadelphia. That's where the scene kind of starts in the 60s and 70s. When I talk about graffiti, I speak at the beginning, it starts with someone that goes to a do not enter sign with a bottle of spray can. That is quite a quick technique to leave your mark behind. And they do some kind of a tagging, some kind of a doodle that for us, it looks like vandalism, but for the person that did it, it might be very, very meaningful. And for some other people, it might mean something, have a symbolism, but for most of us, it's just ugly and vandalism. However, if I just turn my head, whoa, can you see this big picture on the wall? So what happens to graffiti is that it starts as something that is marginalized as a vandalism, a form of crime, something that you have to pay a very, very large fine and maybe even sit in prison for a few nights. But as time goes by, it becomes an accepted form of art that is institutionalized, that is hugged by the municipalities. In some cases, you see here two buildings, one next to each other, that both of them have huge, massive walls with massive works that required a lot of pre-planning, a lot of materials, so a lot of money, and also a lot of time. That means that police officers could have arrested whoever did this work many, many, many times if they were walking by, but they didn't, because this is something that was accepted by the municipality. And I can see that there are some questions in the chat. I will check it once every few minutes. Okay, so we've seen what is the main source of influence that comes to us from America. And now this is our time to say bye-bye, America. As my little boy, I have a year-and-a-half-old son, and he says bye-bye now. So bye-bye, America. And here we are in Israel, far away. However, Western influence is definitely felt. I don't know how many of you guys have been in Tel Aviv. I'm sure you must have looked at all the high-rises, and you must have felt like, wow, this is a city that wants to be a big city with shopping malls and McDonald's and you know, all the chains. Okay, so we're looking at the city of Tel Aviv. What you can see where my mouse is pointing is the old city of Jaffa, from which it all started 150 years ago. And Tel Aviv city starts expanding. Today, we're going to talk about one very particular neighborhood. The neighborhood of Florentine was built in 1930s by a bunch of immigrant Jews that mostly came from Southern Europe, Eastern Europe. They were people, they were not high class, they were not even middle class. They were the blue collar type of workers that just needed a place to live. They bought this land, and the definition for this neighborhood is this is a neighborhood of industry, which means that the bottom side of your house is going to be your workshop and the top part is going to be your housing, which already kind of gives us a little bit of a context to what this neighborhood is all about. We're going to see some of these blue dots, and then we're going to go to slides, but I want you to just understand that this is quite a small neighborhood. And we are diving in to its corner, to the borders of this neighborhood. For those of you that have been to Tel Aviv, we are very close to Neve Tzedek. And what we're looking at right now is two works. The first work, I'm not going to talk about it for very long, but you can see it behind these cars. These are graffitis that are not super interesting, right? If you walk by them, you probably wouldn't give it a second glance. But if you take a look at this building, some kind of an industry building, and they have a bar servers classes over there, and they used to have a big club over there. But basically, it's an industrial area. You have here a massive work, and when you look at this work, you can immediately understand that someone had to put a lot of effort. Someone had to use a crane in order to reach so high. Someone had to work on it for several days and had to think and plan a long time in advance, much longer than the guys that just doodled on the purple here, over here in the bottom. And I want us to take a look at this work before we'll go to the influence in the top right. So what we can see here is a little boy, a little elf maybe. You can see that he's holding a spray can and a couple of paint brushes. And above the little boy who's being carried up by what looks like balloons that are made of hearts, there are 2 feet of someone else who might have risen before him. And there's a little butterfly, and you can see the clouds. Okay, so the artist that did this work is a guy called Kislev. And we're going to see probably another work of his during our talk. And let's see what his source of influence is. So for those of you that have visited Israel or are reading the news about us, you might be recognizing this structure. This is the wall in Gaza, between Gaza, the Gaza Strip and Israel. And when we think about street art, we think about the #1 most famous street artist in the world, a guy called Banksy. He's coming from England, and he's a very pro-Palestinian person. And he came to Israel, well, to Palestine, both to Bethlehem, where he built a hotel, and to Gaza Strip. And he left a couple of works. And one of the works that he left there was this work of the little girl with the balloons. So when we look at it, the first thing will probably come to mind is the duality between something so innocent and sweet as a little girl with her braids just rising up to the sky with her balloons, and the brutality and the militarism of the wall on which she's painted on. And this is purposeful. It's to make us understand that she represents the Palestinian people that just wants freedom, and the brutality is the Israeli army brutality. This is a work of art that is fantastic in he passes the message, in the way he passes the message. Now what I want you to look at is her little feet. Now that you have her little feet in mind, can you see that her little feet appears right here? So when I talk about influences of street art, I'm not only talking about the usage of spray paint or the usage of font, like the font behind me. I'm talking about even sometimes quotations of artworks that are the artworks from the realm of street art. So not only, so sometimes will be quotations that are from the world of history of art, and sometimes the quotations are for other street artists. And this is a whole other realm. If you just study the history of art in university, you can't understand that over here there's a dialogue between the works of art. So when we talk about street art in Tel Aviv, we're talking about street art that is influenced both in its shape and technique from the Western world, but we're all constantly in a dialogue between what's going on over there and these great artists and what's going on in our little Tel Aviv. We are going to make our way, and what I want you to see over here is mostly the fact that there's a carpentry over here and there's a garage over here. And we are starting to understand that this area is an industrial area. Now, yeah, I just want to see. Sorry, sometimes I like reading through the chat there. Okay.
Stav, don't worry about the chat if it's interrupting you. We usually go through the questions at the end.
Okay, fine. So I promise I'll answer everything in the end. Okay, so what I want us to bear in mind with everything I told you about this neighborhood, this is an industrial area neighborhood. This is there was a soap factory and leather factory, and there was textile, which means that there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of smell, and generally the people that lived here, in some parts, no one lives, so no one really cares about the outer walls of their structure. There's no one who's around in nighttime, so anyone can come and do whatever they want on the walls and no one will stop them. And even the people that do live there are the people that can't afford to make their way anywhere else. And one of the reasons that we're focusing over here and not in the area of, let's say, Dizengoff Circle or the White City is because over there where the people's financial situation, they were middle class, high class, there was a lot more policing. Over here, nobody really cared. And the fact that no one really cares about this area allowed this jungle to develop here. Now, the reason I want to show us this work of this parking lot is, first of all, well, there's a parking lot here that's probably useful for everyone who comes here to fix their car or to go to the carpentry. There's this big, massive work here, black and white. It's not very nice to look at. It's something that looks quite depressing, just looking at the characters and their distorted heads and the color choice. Not something really nice. What happens is, in the past couple of years, graffiti in Tel Aviv becomes embraced, and everyone wants to see graffiti in Tel Aviv, so much so that I want to show you a picture of what this garden looks like today. First of all, they destroy the parking lot and they've made it into a park with a nice bench. And second, this is the new work of art there that for me symbolizes the transition of graffiti from starting being black and white. You can see the black and white behind the character with the carrot looking cat. You can still see the black and white, but there's a transition from a form of art that is protest, that doesn't try to make people like it. On the contrary, graffiti understands that it's bothering to a lot of people, and it's controversial. And nowadays, graffiti is something that is highly embraced by a lot of people. The municipality itself pays me to give tours of street art in this neighborhood, even though it's not legal. So in some cases, for example, over here, this carpentry owner, heart attack, came up to him and told him, hey, I want to do this collaboration with a bunch of different artists. And he said, yes, please paint on my wall, because that means more clients. There's more tourists coming by and stopping right next to my carpentry. So we can see that this is a lot more colorful, a lot more interesting to look at, to have a TikTok a film going on here, or whatever it is that new young people are using. And we can see a collaboration of several different artists. So the way I know that there are different artists is if I look at this picture, I can see that the styles of the characters is different. If you can look at the carrot, his eyes, his expressions are different. And you can see on the bottom right, there's a signature. The signature is Meets Giver, but it's behind one of these boxes of cats. Over here, you have another signature, bottom right, Minx. And over here, we have another signature of a guy called Con Air. So we have a collaboration of different artists that brought together all these paints and made this huge project that makes the neighborhood more beautiful, more fun to walk around in. And this is the big transition of graffiti in Tel Aviv and how we look at it today. So Google Earth really shows us the history of this area because these photos are quite old. We are making our way into an area known as Volovelsky Center. Volovelsky Center was a center for small industry, as I said, carpentry, cushioning, metalworks. And what I want us to look at is the small streets. And these small little streets were inviting artists to come and do works here. Now these works, not a lot of people are meant to look at them. So when we think about using a spray can, it's a form of, it's a new tool you need to learn to work with. So if you want to learn to paint with pencils, you want to sketch, no problem. You buy a sketch pad, you buy a couple of pencils, and you can do as many sketches as you want in your house. But when you get a spray can, you have to practice, and you have to do it on a wall. And you need to know how close you are to the wall or how far, and which head you want to use. There's a lot of technique into it. You want to practice where no one will see your sketch pad. So this area was ideal. No one lives here. It's an industrial area. And this is where artists came and started practicing all those years ago. I think there's a signature here that takes us to 2011, which means that that's probably when Google Maps came to film here. And let's look what this area looks like now. So today, the walls, they are thick as an archaeological site with layers upon layers upon layers of generations of people that came and started practicing using a spray can. So there's a huge inflation of usage of spray cans in this area. But the streets remain as they are. Some of them are being changed towards new housing projects because this area is heavily gentrified. Sorry, I didn't mean to spoil, but this neighborhood is heavily gentrifying. Okay. From here, I do want to mention one more thing about the population before we'll go to our slides. This neighborhood was built by very religious Zionistic Jews. This neighborhood has dozens of synagogues. This is one of the biggest synagogues they have. Usually it's a flat in a building in the second floor or something. And there are lots of different synagogues because there's a lot of communities. Some came from Libya, some came from Poland, some came from Ukraine, some came from Morocco, and everyone needs their own little synagogue. And what's really special about this neighborhood is the fact that it had a big variety of people that is respected until today. Now, why am I saying this? You can see that there's a bunch of spray paints on the synagogue, but I want to show you the current spray paint, the current picture on it. What you can see is some artists, two artists actually came by and did a spray painting on the synagogue that is so respectful for Judaism, because what you have here is the image of the temple. And what you have here are floral decorations that are respectful for the second commandment of not having any image. So even nowadays in secular nightlife, Tel Aviv city, there is still respect for the different communities around here that we can see by the street artists. So the street artists are not looking at it and saying, oh, that's a great wall for me to put my name on it. They say, no, we respect the fact that there are other people around here, and the variety of the people in the neighborhood gives it special characteristics. So that's one of the aspects of Florentine. And over here, what we have is another old picture by Google Maps of a municipal area that is really uninviting. And what's going to happen is that if you can see this little orange wall over here, the neighborhood is gentrifying. There are more young people, and the young people are requesting the municipality to create a garden. And the municipality responds and creates a beautiful garden and paints this wall with the orange square that I showed you. They paint it completely white. And what do the people of the neighborhood do? That same night, they take a paintbrush and they paint this gray fish. This artist called Ambi. And on the opposite side of the wall, there's another fish. And the municipality sees it. And what does the municipality want to do all these years ago? They take a bucket of paint and they want to paint it over. And the people of the neighborhood says to the municipality, no, stop it. We are the ones that live here. We want street art in our neighborhood, and this is a perfect wall to have it. So this is one of the first times that the people of Florentine gets to have what they ask for. Yes, it's not correct by the municipality laws, but we're the ones that lives here, and we want street art here. Great. Now, this is the most popular wall to look at in Florentine when we talk about street art, because there's a bunch of works here that are really huge. But I think the most capturing the eye work is the 27 Club. So the 27 Club is the artists that were bigger than life, like Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin. There was Jimi Hendrix and Kurt Cobain, and these people had so much success. So many people, millions of people were looking up to them, and they couldn't handle the fame. They all died of overdose by drugs or alcohol in the age of 27. And we have a character that no one recognizes because he's hidden. And this character is the artist himself. Upon arrival to the age of 27, he was freaking out. Oh my God, all the people I admire most, they all died in the age of 27. What about me? What's going to happen to me? And he decides that he wants to create this work of art as a way to battle these fears. And several days after he put this work of art here, these stains appeared directly on his face. No one knows who put these stains up here. The artist won't admit whether it was him realizing that, how can I put myself on the same line as these guys? Or was it someone else that thought that, who is this guy and how can he compare himself to these people? But in a way, it's I think there's something about the generation, the millennials, of like, can we really be that great? Can we really, do we really have some kind of a contribution to the world as these people? I mean, who can reinvent guitar like Jimi Hendrix, right? So how can we really be great, and how can we preferably not die in the age of 27? So I think these are some of the dilemmas that he's reflecting in this work. But you can see that this wall is extremely full with lots and lots and lots of works. One of the new works that I saw there recently was the Bitcoin Own Your Future. So some artists are actually giving it financial advice on the wall. We have here a work, we can see here the vertebrae, and I just want you to look at this work with the vertebrae. You can see that it's on a black sticker, and we'll talk about these type of works in quite shortly. So this is the big wall of Benatar Garden, and we'll head to the place from which we're going to dive into our museum. This street is called the Velo Street. You can see that this street is purposely trying to make cars drive slower. And all of the walls here in 2011 are painted gray, which is the municipality gray. Municipality keeps painting over street works of art here. And today it's completely different, very, very colorful. And this is what we're going to do now. Moving on to our tour. So, okay, good. So the first artist that I collected his works from this street. Oh, by the way, all of the works that I will see in the slides are works that I've taken photos of from the neighborhood of Florentine throughout my visits there. And most of them are from that particular street. It really became a street museum. The first artist I'd like to show is the artist calling himself Hashtag. He actually looks at himself as someone who's working in a street museum. How do I know? Take a look at what he does. First of all, he's taking these Renaissance and other works from the classical world of art history. And we'll talk about the themes and what he does to it in a moment. But the first thing I can see is that this looks classical. And we also have here these frames. But you can see the crease over here. So you know this frame is not real. This frame is printed. So he's obviously printing something, but he's including the frame, framing himself as, hey, I'm doing some form of a street art in a street museum here, and I'm taking myself seriously. So should you. And then he has here this group of people. They are they're in a funeral, and you can see that the pastor is speaking from the Bible, but we have here an editing. He's adding here something that we know from modern life, from a WhatsApp group or something of that kind. That person has left the group. In other words, they say hashtag individual. The individual is once you leave social media group, then you are considered to be dead. We have the picture on the right. I particularly love is the picture of the character of Moses. I'm sure you guys recognize him standing in the middle of the Red Sea, and he has followers. But so we know it was 600,000 followers because the Bible tells us it was 600,000 men that were following him, and who cares about the women, children, animals, and so on. But whatever, it was 600,000 followers, and what we can see is that the followers, it's the font and the graphics is of social media, of Instagram or Facebook. In other words, what matters most is, well, this is my interpretation, what matters most is not the people who are actually following my leadership, but the people that are following me that are liking me on social medias. And this is history influences. So this is Hashtag, and he's a very interesting artist. I think we're going to see another work of art of his quite soon. And what makes graffiti in Tel Aviv special, if you look at the background behind me, the background is from the street, the Cordovero Street. It's Cordovero number 10, so 10 Cordo. What's interesting though is graffiti in Israel has to adapt itself to a different language, which is the Hebrew language. So what we can see here, without reading Hebrew, I'm not going to test your Sunday school abilities, but you can see a Star of David, and then you have here one word in a line, and you might even recognize the shape of it. So I don't know how many of you have associated it, but to keep calm and move forward, this is an exact translation. הישאר רגוע והמשך לנוע. That's what the artist or the doodler was doing here. But when we talk about Hebrew, a lot of times what makes graffiti one of the most famous aspects of graffiti is the font, the big bubble letters, and they're always in English, as you can see behind me. Over here, we have a word in Hebrew. I hope some of you can recognize it. the last letter is not the final letter as it should be, but it says Shalom. Ah, right, Shalom. You're just testing me to make sure that I know to read it. So it says Shalom. And even with the nikud over here. And what's really cool is this is the fonts that you're expecting to see in any graffiti in New York or in Philadelphia, but this one is in Hebrew. And what I read into it, okay, it might be a bit of a stretch, but you can see that the Shalom, behind the Shalom, there's a brick wall, lots of yellow bricks. For me, when I look at a brick wall in Judaism context, I always think about the wall. I mean, we only have this one wall that's really, really special for us. And you can see that behind this wall, there are buildings. So for me, that person is telling us that Shalom, Hebrew, prioritizes Jerusalem before Tel Aviv. That's how I see it, at least. I don't think it's a coincidence that he put these buildings behind the ancient construction that we had done here in the time of our kingdoms. Okay, so next. You might remember the sticker with the vertebrae that I was pointing out earlier. These are all from the same assembly line of Budilosha art. What she does when we're talking about Hebrew, I mean, the most famous book we have in Hebrew is the Bible, right, the Tanakh. And when us as Hebrew speakers, we see Bible and it's not a problem for us to read it. You know, how crazy is that? We look at the 4,000-year-old book and we just read it as if it's the most casual thing we can do. And that's what makes Hebrew very, very special, that we have the influences of the Bible out in the open, and it's not necessarily in a religious context. So this artist, she takes the verses that are related to a body organ, and then she prints them on a sticker with the body organ in the most anatomical form. So in this case, it's a quote from Ecclesiastes: "The wise have eyes in their head, while the fools walk in the darkness." So she puts the eye over here, and there are several different body organs that she's quoting here. This is also an opportunity to say that, as opposed to the guy above her who's probably using some kind of a spray or a marker, she is in zero risk almost to be caught, because she makes the sticker and she does all the planning at home, and then she comes over there. All she needs to do is to put a little bit of glue on the wall, put the sticker, and put a little bit of glue on the sticker. And that's it, she's gone. And this is one of the best techniques to not get caught if you ever want to try to do some graffiti. Okay, so when we're talking about, okay, wait, let's when we look at this door. On this door, there's a man with the tefillin, and it says very proudly, "Made in Israel." But I want to look at the small little writings over here. It says Muriel Street Art. Muriel, I happen to know her. Muriel is a Canadian-born Jew who made Aliyah here a couple of years ago. And it's obvious that for someone who was born in an area in which she's a minority, as a Jewish minority, and she chooses to make Aliyah and to come to Israel, there's a sense of pride. A sense of pride that of made in Israel, I don't have nothing to be ashamed of, not in my Judaism and not in my Israeliness. And I think this is the biggest difference between the Jewish community anywhere else in the world, even New York, the biggest Jewish community in the world outside of Israel. And there's a very big difference between being a minority and between being a majority, and the sense of pride and fearlessness that you can show off the made in Israel that she put over here. Now, there's another population that immigrated to Israel in the 90s, and this is totally my reading into this work of art. I don't know who the artist is because there's no signature. We have here a matryoshka. Matryoshka is one of these Russian dolls that when you open it, there's another doll, and there's another doll, and another doll, and she has that very nice little scarf, Russian scarf. And what we're seeing is the X on the eyes. So when I think about the Russian migration, the Russian aliyah of 1.2 million Russian Jews that came here in the 90s after the fall of the Soviet Union. I'm talking about a community that did not have it in the easiest conditions, and in a lot of cases they had to bury their own heritage. In a lot of cases, their names as well. They had to change their names from the Russian names to Hebrew names, and I think they got a message that if you want to progress in society, in the Israeli society, you need to push back your Russian heritage, and that's what I see in this work of art in the X for Eyes. Now, we have here a picture of an elder lady. You might recognize the book and the girl in the book and Frank. What the elder lady is saying, unfortunately, I sell my diary to buy food and medications. Wow, this is a punch to the belly. And this is what street art or a good work of art can do to us when we see a reflection of ourselves as a society. So we're talking about 200,000 Holocaust survivors that lives in Israel. A quarter of them are below poverty line, can't afford food, medications, terrible living conditions, the people that didn't have children from one reason or another to look after them in their elderly age. And this is a real issue we have in Israel. And we can see it reflecting in the street art. And we have another artist, not the same guy as the paste up over here, but we can definitely recognize Anne Frank here. And it says, the caption is, and here, would she have survived? Meaning, look, how do we treat our Holocaust survivors? I mean, they barely survived Europe, and then they came to the land of Israel, and over here they can't survive either because they don't have enough money. So we have social issues that reflect on our walls. One of the things that we see in street art in Israel is our Jewish heritage. So if we take a look to the right, we can see what she calls it the petting corners. It's made of wool and fur and all kinds of textures that are nice to touch. Obviously, pre-Corona time, I don't think anyone touches it nowadays. And but the shape is a chamsa. We all know the chamsa. You probably saw it in a souvenir store in Tzfat or in Jerusalem. The chamsa against the evil eye. This is a Jewish symbol. And over to the left, we can see the Nachman. I don't know if you know about the Hasidic group of Breslevs. The ones that Rabbi Nachman comes from Oman in the Ukraine, and it's a very big Hasidic movement of born-again religious Jews in Israel that goes to Oman in Ukraine every Rosh Hashanah, and they are the masters of graffiti in Israel. You can see the Nachman Me'oman everywhere, on bridges, in every city, and Tel Aviv is no different. What makes it different is the style. Wow, these people invested a lot of time in creating this Nachman and the religious guy right next to him. Talking about religious people. So here I am walking in the streets of Florentine, looking at this work of art, and I think to myself, it's a bunch of lines, it's a character that's not particularly nice to look at. And then I go to New York. I did my master's degree in American Jewish Studies, and we had a 10-day trip to New York and DC. And I extended my trip, and I went to Brooklyn for a street art tour, because what am I so obsessed in life about is street art. So here I am in Brooklyn, and I see this girl again, and there's no mistaking. When you see this girl, this is the girl. And I started looking into it, and it turns out the lady who did this work is a lady called Sarah Arental. Sarah Arental was born into a Hasidic ultra-Orthodox group in New York City, in Brooklyn. One of those groups that are really, really closed, that there's no cell phones, no internet, no telephone, no television, nothing of the mass media, nothing of New York and Manhattan is in the life of these communities. And one of the days of her life, she decided she wants to stop being religious, and of course she becomes from a part of a community to no one. She's considered to be dead. Everyone says Kaddish on her, and she's alone in the world, and she has to face a world of stimulations that she has never learned how to experience and how to moderate in her senses. And for me, this explains this character with her eyes that are popped open for all of the new things that she's never seen before, and she's completely shocked about it. And there's something about her lips that was always making me question why, what's about these lips? And I think there's such a lack of awareness, because one of the topics that is most hush-hush in these communities is sexuality, and she's totally unaware to herself and her sexuality and what does she looks like and what message can it probably send to people around her. And this is the character that she has that accompanies her between the two cities that she comes from, Brooklyn and Tel Aviv, after she made Aliyah here. And there's another artist that is born here in Israel. His name is Ometz. Ometz in Hebrew means courage. And he's an ultra-Orthodox man. His family does not know about his nightly hobby. Neither is his community, because if people would know, he would be excommunicated. And he's taking these blocks of Scrabbers. You know, when we play Scrabbers, whatever blocks you get in the beginning, they kind of determine your game. And he's writing, life is complex, and he draws this square. And life is complex when you're born into a square, and these are the blocks that you get, but you have a curiosity to explore outside of the square. But you have absolutely no ability, because you will lose everything if you try. So this is the complexity of life. No one knows who this guy is except for his signature or exactly where he lives. But for me, he's one of the most interesting artists we have in the scene. Over here, we have another work by Hashtag. He is the guy who likes to stab us with sarcasm. We have here Benjamin Herzl. And we have here a caption saying, Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives. Right? I say it with my birthright trips on the top of Masada. This is one of the most encouraging things to think about when I think about my Jewish heritage. The nation of Israel lives. And we have here the father of modern Zionism comes with his telescope and he's checking, wait, are we really? I mean, did we not get anything wrong along the way? And this is exactly the sort of sarcasm that hits you right in the soft stomach when you have a lot of criticism, inward criticism. Okay, let's talk about portraits or leaders. We have here a tree. From the tree, we have a bunch of birds, but if you look at the tree, it looks like a profile of a person. And it says, follow your dreams, but don't sleep. And when I look at this, and I'm not the only one, I have some proofs in that area, a bunch of other portraits of this guy. I see David Ben-Gurion with his crazy hair. And when we think about David Ben-Gurion, he has his house in Ben-Gurion Boulevard in Tel Aviv. And in his house, there's a library of 20,000 books. And when you go on a tour there, the guide tells you that this guy read all these books in the original language. He knew to read in 8 different languages. And he read all books. And how did he read all these books? Because he followed his dreams, but he did not sleep. This guy slept 2 or 3 hours a night. And that's how he got this country up and running and was the prime minister for so long. So this is a very, very impressive person who his dreams has led us to an amazing head start. We have here another character of a leader. So you take a look at this black and white picture. And the first thing I'll tell you is that this is old. This has been here for a long time compared to the average lifetime of a work of street art. And we have here these 2 arrows. We have here a bunch of characters. Some of you might already see it and think, wow, I know what this historical event is. And I'll give you a hint. It's November 4th, 1995, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. So the next day after the assassination, a picture was advertised in the newspaper Yediot Achronot or Ynet, and it was from the security camera that got a shot of the assassination. You can actually see the Yitzhak Rabin over here, and over here you have Yigal Amir, the guy who assassinated Yitzhak Rabin. And the artist that lived in the neighborhood called Yigal Stein is going to say, I need to do something about it. I need to create something. And he's taking this photo that was taken from the security camera and it was published in the newspaper, and it enlarges it and puts it on the wall. So this is here since 1995. The municipality has tried to raise it several times, but every time the people of the neighborhood came out and said, look, we know it's not legal, okay? But this is a part of our story. We want to have a reminder to how fragile democracy is. We want to have a reminder to how what hatred can lead us to. And we want to have this as a constant reminder to the fact that we can do better. Don't erase this. And until this very day, this work of art is been there, and the bottom part keeps changing, but the top part is getting the most respect from every street artist in the neighborhood. No one would dare to cover it up because everyone knows that this is above differences of style or differences of opinion. This is exactly about differences of opinion and where it can lead us to. The next leader that obviously gets the biggest amount of arrows is the leader that is currently in place. This is Bibi Netanyahu, who's been for about 20 years, plus minus a couple of cadences, our prime minister. So we have here a sweet baby Jesus with his portrait. We have here Bibi Netanyahu and Sarah goes to the beach, and the guy who did this shear was caught by a police officer. And the police officer was so embarrassed, he didn't know what to do. I mean, obviously street art is not okay, but this part of town is okay. So he told the artist that he's exiled from Tel Aviv for 2 weeks. This was his punishment. So even the municipality and the police doesn't know what to do about someone who's doing street art. They all accept it. Another work we have here is a smiley face, but the smiley face doesn't have a smiley, he has a mask on. And the caption is, Bibi wants you to shut up, meaning he's taking advantage of the situation that our mouth is covered because of the mask, so the pandemic, and he's taking advantage of it for his political usage. Of course, I'm sure there are some parts of Israel in which he's getting a lot of support on the street art walls, but here in Tel Aviv, not so much. Over here, we have a very interesting caption. This is a very interesting work. It's not so elaborate and not so colorful, but it is with a lot of criticism inwards for ourselves. We have here the Hey of Hashem that turns into the Shin Chet of Shekel Chadash, in Israeli shekel. And this is a work that every time I stop with a group and ask them what do they think of that it means, I get at least 5 different answers that I have not thought about any of them. So I really want you to have a look at it, and whatever you think that it means, it's probably the right answer, because this work of art belongs to us, the viewers. Okay, over here we have 2 interesting things. First of all, we have here an Adam and Eve. I don't know if you can see, Adam is holding an apple, Eve has a fig leaf. Both of them actually has a fig leaf. But what's really cool is the fact that Eve says no, and Adam says, I respect your no. So someone saw this work and added these 2 captions. This is a later edition by someone completely different, in a completely different style and method. And we can see Me Too going into the streets of the city of Tel Aviv. What we have here is another work by the artist Keith Lev. we've seen already with the balloons. And in this work, what we can see is two characters. The first one is on the left. On the left is Srulik. You guys might recognize him from Jewish or Israeli newspapers. Srulik was the character that describes the pioneer Israeli, the ideal Israeli boy, with his sandals and his shorts and his bucket hat and his little curl, and he's a bit of a chutzpah, and he's a bit of hard work, and he's the kibbutznik, and he's everything we want to have. On a sideline, I will say Dosh is a Hungarian born Jew who is a Holocaust survivor. So for him, the meaning of having an ideal Israeli must have been very big. To the right, we can see a character called Chentele, and we can't really see his face. We can't see his face at all, actually, in any of his caricatures, because he was made by a guy called Naji El-Eli, who was born in 1938 in a town near Nazareth. And in 1948, he became a refugee. His family went to Lebanon, and ever since then, he's been a refugee. And he became a caricature artist, and he was super duper famous, made hundreds of thousands of caricatures. And the character of Chentele was the one that was most associated with him. What we can see is a little boy that doesn't have shoes. That little boy is him, a 10-year-old boy that has his clothes patched. He has his back to us because he's always going somewhere. He has no home. He has to travel from one refugee camp to another refugee camp. This is I call Srulik the ideal Israeli. This is the essence of Palestinian, of Palestinian people. And what Kislev does is he's putting these two characters together, ideal Israeli and ideal Palestinian, and they're hugging, and they're going together in a path that we can't see just yet, but there's a lot of optimism here. And I think this is one of the most beautiful works of art we have in Florentine. Talking about Arabs, we have here a writing, only a Hebrew speaker can understand me, and then the same caption in Arabic, only an Arabic speaker can understand me. So can we really ever communicate? And then this graphic designer who does fonts decided, yes, we need to start talking in the same language. So she created an entire font that the bottom part of the letters is Hebrew, but the top part of the letters is Arabic, which means that when we read this letter in Hebrew and an Arabic person will read the same words in Arabic, we will read the same word. So I read here Toda, but they will read here Shukran, and it means thank you. And same goes with Ahava, love. And this is one of the ways that she wants to integrate our communities. And over here we have the people that believes that, look, at the end of the day, if we love each other, it doesn't matter. Our love is to each other as a human being is bigger than the difference of religion. And to the latest topic to the last topic that I'll actually bring up is COVID-19. We have here a teddy bear with X-rays eyes, not because he's dead. This is just a style that this artist likes using. But this teddy bear, in this case, has a mask. These masks from the beginning of Corona, when no one knew what's going on with the filter. We have here the cat, but the cat is also wearing a mask. And we have here a sticker, which is another form of street art, small stickers that says happy quarantine. I don't know if you guys know, we had 3/4 quarantines in Israel that were exceptionally difficult for people with kids that didn't have any education system or kindergartens. And it says happy quarantine with the pizza boxes, the PlayStation, and, well, in this case, it looks like someone is smoking weed, and Bamba. I don't know if you remember Bamba from your visit. Yes.
Yes.
So what else can we do while we're in quarantine? The last picture I want to show you is this, made by this street artist. You can see here a tour guide. I know he's a tour guide because we know each other. There's a cap, there's a bag, and he's selling street art lines for $100, and he says, I know nothing. So this is what street artist thinks about people like me. Now, I am aware to the fact that I have a lot of education in art history and in Israel history and in Tel Aviv history, and quite a bit in street art. But in the end of the day, when an artist puts his work of art in the street, he is losing ownership on it. And I don't own the interpretation, and I don't own the real meaning behind it. It is up to the individual to stop by this work of vandalism or graffiti or street art and take it in and have a battle about it. Do I agree? Do I disagree? And to move on with his life, or not to stop by it. But in the end of the day, I have no mandate for a truth, because these works of art means different things for different people. So I hope that with this interpretation for street art, the street artist would have agreed. With this, I'd like to conclude my monologue. And now I want to take a look at the chat, because you guys have been super active, and I'm so curious to see what have I not answered. Okay.
Thank you.
Shachaf, toda rabba. Thank you very much. It was lovely. It was beautiful. It was happy and interactive and everything. I really loved it. I as I told you in the beginning, I'm looking forward to it. So now, thank you. It was a great pleasure. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to remind you that this presentation is Pay As You Wish one. And I will type Shachaf's PayPal address now in here in the chat. If you're not, if you're not dealing well with the chat, and you already have my PayPal address, so that's fine as well. And we obviously send to Shachaf. And yeah, now your questions. What we normally do, we have the questions which are already on the chat, and then Shachaf will address to them. And then if you have more questions, so you're welcome to type more questions. And then in the end, if you still have any questions and we are done with the chat, so then you are welcome to unmute yourself. Now, just one word, since some people start dropping off as soon as the presentation is finished, which is now. So we just like to remind you that the day after tomorrow, this coming Thursday, we have a we have a virtual tour with myself as a tour guide, and we will be following the footsteps of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin, the chief rabbinical institution, which existed some 18 centuries ago, and we will be following the footsteps of this institution along the Galilee. We will be walking and talking from Usha to Shfar'am. Okay, I guess you never heard on both of them, but these are very interesting locations, and I think you will enjoy it, because these are brand new things, brand new sites, and they're really beautiful. This is the best time of the year to visit. So this is the day after tomorrow, the wanderings of the Sanhedrin from Usha to Shfar'am. And then next week we have a presentation and a tour as usual. So the presentation will be by a colleague of mine, a tour guide. Her name is Joanna Meisel, and she is an expert in biblical plants and Israeli flora. So we will be listening about a combination of the plants in the Bible, plants today, and whatever's in between, and a lot of jokes as well. So, okay, we have a botanical presentation, which we never had before, by a real specialist. And then the tour next week will be at one of the most beautiful, one of the most heavily visited, for a good reason, locations, and this is Ein Gedi. So we will make it all the way to the Dead Sea, and we will be visiting this region of Ein Gedi, which consists of a beautiful nature reserve of Ein Gedi, a kibbutz of Ein Gedi, and an ancient synagogue of Ein Gedi. Okay, so we have Ein Gedi with 3 different parts to it, and even if you've been there, so I'm sure you will like to see it again. So that's for next week. Okay, this week we have something special, unusual, unfamiliar. Next week, you all know what I'm talking about, and this is the beautiful Ein Gedi region. That's all I had to say. And now the chat. Stav, would you like me to read it for you, or you will read it for yourself? Whatever is easier for you.
I'll read it. So I'll refer to some of the first the first work I showed you was very controversial. First of all, it was done on the Palestinian side of the West Bank, so not a lot of permission is needed. Second, Banksy is not very known for someone who's asking permission, and that's a part of the vandalism aspect of street art. It was done before the balloon phenomenon started, and this is a part of the complexity to identify with the terrible conditions that the Palestinians have, and at the same time feeling strong in our Zionistic identity. I think it's okay to be exposed to his works of art, even if I heavily disagree with them. And what Kislev does is taking a quote of something that is controversial, and you saw how in the end the character of Kislev is a peacemaking person. So this is a Kislev that I've mostly wanted to speak about. The Tel Aviv street art compared to other cities, there are no awards or prizes or any money that I know of. I just know that there's a lot of artists so let's divide it. There are some people that are artists that are making money from their art, and the street art is a way to advertise themselves. So they have a hashtag and their Instagram page that you can go to. And some of them are actually very successful. They're selling in big galleries. They're invited, and they're commissioned to the works. But street art is the way that they started to be known to the world. There are some people that they have a day job. They're programmers, they're architects, and this is their hobby. And for some people, this is maybe a transition in life moment that they really want to express something from within. And so no one really does street art for the money, one might say, and we don't really have awards. In some cases, the municipality might pay for the paints. Very, very few cases though. And not all the paints either. So it's the institution is not yet really able to pay for the street art. I'm not aware of artists for Israel. There's a chance that I know it through that I know the murals, but I don't know the organization. Why so little of the graffiti written in Hebrew? So if we were to go to Florentine, and I invite you all, guys, when you're around, please, you have my email address, drop a line and we'll go for a cup of coffee. We'll go to Florentine. You will see millions of works. I had to choose 30 or 40 to show you, and naturally I chose the ones that you can relate to more, that are more visual or written in English. But most of the works, especially the street poetry and the political murals, are going to be in Hebrew. But it's quite frustrating, I think, to listen to an entire lecture in which I'm translating to you works of art. So this is the reason I chose these works. So we don't really have a lot of communication between the artists to the community, not like in the sense of like sharing the works. Let's see. Right, so when we talk about this neighborhood as a gentrified neighborhood, as I said, it was a very poor neighborhood. That's why street art was even able to start there. But today it's a very popular neighborhood. It's becoming more and more expensive, less and less crime, and naturally on every building, like the building behind it that they will knock off in order to build a new building, there will be not as much, definitely not as much spontaneous street art. So this neighborhood is changing its face, and I'll say in around 10, 20 years, it's not going to be the same. The street art zone is going to have to move to other parts of town. Right, so there are different techniques. So with some people will be using a freehand, some people will be using a stencil, some people will paste up their stickers. Right, the snowman with the masks, absolutely.
Stav, if you read the question that you're answering, because we don't always know what you're answering.
Right, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so does the artist who does the original mural resent when another person paints over it? Yes, I've spoken to several artists. Some of them feel very very negative about the fact that someone might have put a mural on top, and some of them just accept, this is the street, I come, I do something, there's a chance that tomorrow it's not going to be there. This is a part of the beauty of my work. That's why I can paint and paint and paint and paint and not get so emotionally attached to my works. Not to mention, everyone takes a photo of their works nowadays, so it's all either on Facebook or Instagram or publish the book, for example. But yeah, there's definitely a matter of politics between different artists. Okay, other questions?
Does anyone else have a question? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I have a question. The first thing you showed was the street sign with some scribbling over it. And in the US, many of those types of sites are the signs of a street gang marking their territory. Does that exist in it? That may even have been the start of street art in some places. Does that exist in Israel?
Excellent question. So there was definitely the issue of marking your territory. So you know that some people, especially politically, are more active in one area or another, but we don't really have gangs, or at least none that the normal people know about. I'm sure there's a lot of other forms of organized crime, but for a normal Tel Avivian, we don't know anything about gangs. There are only two tags that exist in Tel Aviv that are repeating tags of soccer teams. And these are very annoying tags, and they're everywhere, and they take no consideration of whether it's a new building or whether it's a work of art or a mural that they're covering, but it's only the soccer teams.
Julia, were you going to put Stav's PayPal, or did I miss it? Put your PayPal?
Stav, can you type your PayPal into the chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go for it. So while you're taping your PayPal, I just want to say that Florentine, the neighborhood we were just visiting with Stav, is especially dear to me because this was my first home when I left my mother's home, which was about 30 years ago. But this was the first rented apartment where my boyfriend and myself lived together as adults. And we had no money whatsoever, and that's why we ended up in Florentine. This place is still dear to me, and each time I visited it after I left, I saw how well developed it is and how many new people are coming, and so many students and so many art and artists and bars and coffee houses, and so it just became a beautiful place. And yes, indeed, you should visit it when you come for graffiti, for bars, and other reasons as well. And there's so much more to it.
Just a quick question,
Sure.
And a comment. First of all, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. Do you have something similar for Jerusalem in the Shuk area that you could do for us? And we'll be happy to invite you back. Well, it's up to them. And also, are you familiar with a guy named Guy Raz who used to do the Tel Aviv street art tours years ago?
So I'm not familiar with Guy Raz, and there's an amazing street art scene in Jerusalem, but I must admit, I'm a Tel Aviv expert, so architecture, history, Jaffa, Neve Tzedek, street art, culinary, everything, I'm yours. Well, obviously not the culinary. Bauhaus, I'll give a full hour and a half about Bauhaus if you want. Some will call it an obsession. no idea why. But I'm mostly in Tel Aviv. I'm sure Julia knows someone who's an expert in the street art in Jerusalem.
I take a lot of photographs. I don't think she can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I take a lot of photographs when we travel, and I do some photography, and I'm very much drawn to graffiti. I love it. And one of my favorites I took in Moscow. There's a big street called Arbat. The Arbat, and it's a big shopping street, very famous. But right around the corner, which is where I like to look and see what's behind, I took this one, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's one of my favorites. I don't know what it says, except there's a peace sign, and that I recognize. But all the others are just an amazing array of colors, and I love it. Wow. And just one other quickie. This is in Budapest. This is a woman looking at some graffiti, and I love the fact that the colors are very similar, and she doesn't know what to make of it. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Yes?
Carol. Yeah, we can see.
I think there's something really special about graffiti. I mean, it's something that's so easy to ignore and to push back as some kind of an urban phenomenon that represents decay or something. But in the end of the day, for me, it represents a city that is alive. There are people that are around here and they care about the space around there. And there's a lot to learn about the culture and the city through understanding the street art, whether it exists or not.
You know, something I would like to add about the interpretation of the different graffitis. I mean, as you said, the moment the artist places his artwork on a wall, so everybody can understand it, everybody can add to it, everybody can make an interpretation. And, you know, it was so interesting for me to listen to your interpretation of the graffiti of the Matryoshka, this Russian doll, you know, the stuff which has a doll inside a doll inside a doll. And then you were talking about the axes on the eyes. Now, I have no idea what was the idea of the artist, you know, but I do know that this is the Russian way to make eyes in an embroidery. So maybe it was just, you know, a typical Russian way to make eyes, even though these are graffiti. And maybe this is exactly what you said. So I have no clue. But it is interesting to listen to everybody's understandings of the artwork. And I know that Tel Aviv attracts.
Can I add one point?
Howard, could you just let Julia just finish her sentence?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Lana. So I just wanted to say that Tel Aviv is known as a very attractive destination for graffiti artists and street artists from all over the world, because we have so many walls, and as Stav mentioned, the police doesn't do much to prevent the graffiti work. So people do come from Europe to make their graffitis here, and so we have a beautiful international street museum in a way all over Tel Aviv. Yes, okay, that's that.
So yes, the neighborhood I showed has a name. It's called Florentine. As I showed in the beginning on Earth, it's quite a small neighborhood, and I will say that I give that there's another area in Tel Aviv called Nachalat Binyamin, for example. You might recognize it. Yeah, the arts and crafts. They have an amazing street art scene. And let me tell you, it does not overlap. It's not even the same artist. It's 10 minutes walking distance, and it's completely different. So different neighborhoods in Tel Aviv generates different street art and different developments. That's one thing. When do they do these paintings? So for the question, they do these paintings traditionally at night when someone is watching on either side of the street to make sure no police officer is coming by. But today, it's not so dangerous and not a lot of people has anything to say. So there were times that I was leading a tour and someone was in the middle of doing their street art. And I will say in some cases, the municipality, for example, in Nachalat Binyamin area, the municipality says, right, tonight is an awesome white night. all of the cultural events are happening, and we're inviting all of the artists to paint in all of these walls of Nahalat Binyamin. So the municipality is actually telling the public to come and check it out, and all the artists to do their work, and for everyone to have a look at it. So really, in some cases, the municipality is embracing, and even if the municipality is not embracing, then what's the big deal? I did some street art, and rarely does anyone actually get punished over it.
Howard, what was the question? I know Howard had a question, and I cut him off earlier.
I guess my view on graffiti was framed a lot back in the 1980s and early 90s when the New York City subway cars were used as canvases by many graffiti artists. And that's when a lot of the graffiti artists got glorified and the trend started.
Yeah, you're on camera.
But as a user of the subways, having to ride them, not being able to see out windows, not being able to see a subway map on cars, and I wasn't. The users of the trains weren't that pleased with the graffiti painting because it defaced. Because I'm sure people wouldn't want your car painted with murals painting over the windows of your car where you couldn't see out of it. And we view the subway as our means of transportation, and it just made them unpleasant to ride.
So I think there's a delicate balance, especially after speaking to some artists. The people that are coming to vandalize, they don't care if it's a brand new, freshly painted wall. They'll come and they'll vandalize and they'll make a point out of the vandalization. People that are artists that are there for 5, 10 years already, they're not interested in hurting anyone. They're interested to add something. So they will go to the back walls or to the side walls, or they will go to walls that generally have a lot going on in them, that there is some kind of a consent from the people that lives there. And when this consent disappears, then a lot of times these streets kind of change. They don't have as much works of art because again, the people that are there for the hobby and because they like it and they like leaving a stamp, they don't want to get everyone angry. They want to do something that's nice for everyone.
Okay, well, it seems like, yeah.
I don't have a question. I have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that your presentation today, Stav, has opened up a whole new channel of thinking that most of us never even dreamed about, even if we came from the New York subways. And your explanations of the detail and the depth of the thinking that went behind some of these artworks was dramatic and unusual. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for joining with us today.
Wonderful. Really wonderful.
I just have one quickie. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is there a definite definition? Is there a difference between graffiti and street art? I mean, street art I think of as murals. And I always wanted a bumper sticker that said, I stopped for murals. And I have a lot of pictures of them. But anyway, is there a difference?
So I love how you framed it as a quickie. But okay, so graffiti, the word comes from Greek of scribing something. And usually we associate it as the semantic field of graffiti is something that is illegal, whereas the semantic field of street art is something that is more noble, something that deserves to be presented. And the reason I'm mentioning the word semantic, because that's all that is. Someone will look at the work behind me and say, this is graffiti and this needs to be banned. And someone will look behind me and say, wow, I love the color combination. And for me, this is street art. So the difference between graffiti and street art is in the eyes of the beholder. And there is no legal difference between the two of them. Some will say that something that is just scribbled quickly is a graffiti, while a street art will be different formats and will be done in different ways that are not necessarily traditional or will be bigger or murals. But in the end of the day, if someone hates everything that is spray painted and is initiated by someone who's vandalizing, then he will look at everything and say, this is graffiti and this is something I don't like. Whereas someone like me, I will look at every small little scribbler and say, this is a street artist. So it really depends on who you're talking to.
Art, I have a question. Is there a definition? Is the definition of street art and wall art two different definitions?
Well, some artists that are wall artists are commissioned. Most of them are commissioned, right? When we think about a wall artist, we'll think that, for example, there's in Israel an artist that his name is Rami Meiri. He's doing massive wall arts for decades all around Israel, and he does not like to be called a street artist or a graffiti artist. He's a wall artist. He does his works of art commissioned on massive walls, always with permission, and he's always looking after his works and comes and, repaints this detail if it was painted over or something. So he does not like to be called a street artist. So yes, I think that we can say that some people are wall artists.
You're correct. I agree with you. Thank you.
Just want to once again welcome all of our newcomers, and I hope you'll come and join us again. We do this every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you are interested in what Volunteers for Israel itself is, we'd be happy to talk about it. There's a little bit of a schmooze after this. I do have a meeting at 4, but we can schmooze for half an hour. But I'm happy to talk about it and answer any of your other questions.
Okay, so I will say thank you again to Stav. Toda rabah. It was a pleasure, and good night. And well, I already have a request to have you again with a presentation about a bathhouse in Tel Aviv. We will discuss it. Yeah, you see, we already have a request for next presentation, which means that this one was really successful. So we will talk about it separately, and I hope you will donate generously, and she will have another motivation to be awake so late, even though she has a baby who is asleep now, and she needs to get her sleep as well. So you are dismissed. And thank you for coming. Thank you all for joining us. And I really hope to see you all again, the old comers, the newcomers, the VFY, everybody. You're most welcome to join us as much as possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ilana. Laila Tov. Toda rabah. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you,
Albert. Hang on for a little.
All my friends.
Laila Tov, thank you so much for hosting me. See you next time.
Thank you, Stav.
Laila Tov.
That was great.